Hello and welcome to this webinar on EAM, Elevated Authority Management. Today you'll be hearing from myself, Steve Bradshaw, and my good friend Guy Manuel, the CEO and founder of Cilasoft. Today we're going to be talking about the benefits of EAM and what it can do for you. We're going to go through a series of common scenarios trying to explain where the product is of use. Common to all of these scenarios, we'll need to restrict and audit super user functions, and by super user I mean someone who has more authority than they require, a temporary super function. We're going to show how we can limit the time that they have this elevated authority purely to the time they need it, solely when they're actually making the changes. The rest of the time they'll be just like everybody else. And we'll show you how we can generate both summary and detailed data. Why would you want to do that? Well, for auditing it's very useful. We use summary data to see if there's a problem, and then we dive into the detail when we spot something that's abnormal so that we can see what's going on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Cilasoft and Rotem. If you want to know more about us, please Google us. But there's a slide here. Pause the presentation if you want to know a little bit more. The EAM product forms part of the Cilasoft compliance suite, or Cilasoft as we call it for short. You'll see it highlighted there on the left and the middle. And it's very much about this targeted need to give people the authorities they need on a self-checkout basis in a controlled and organized manner. You'll see a little bit more as we move into our scenarios. In its first scenario, we're going to take a nice, simple, everyday option. For a user that has a series of menus, for today's purpose we'll just give him one menu. With a series of options, for today's purpose we'll give him 3. And those are his day-to-day works. But every now and again this user is trusted to do something that's a little more involved. He's been given 3 special commands by the IT team that allow him to fix data or look at data that he wouldn't normally look at in his normal operations. Now in this scenario, when he's been given this special trust and power, we need to audit this for compliance reasons. And Guy is now going to show you our first scenario where we show you just how easy this can be done. Guy.
Thank you, Steve. Hello everybody, welcome. So let's start with 5250 screen. So I will sign on with a user with a limited command and with also no authority on the data. So we will see how we could elevate the authority and just to give what we need for this user and just that. So, okay, so I am now in the menu, so a restricted menu where I cannot type any command. So as you could see, I'm restricted at the command line, but I still can access my database using adopted authority. So this is my customer file that I will use during all the series of webinars with Steve. Okay, option 2, and then okay, option 3 is the same. And then the option 10 is just a list of commands that I use on a regular basis in order not to bother the IT people, because they trust me, and also because it's very predefined. So it means that I cannot change the parameter of the command or only add commands. So this is their decision to give me the commands they want with the parameters they want. So let's take option 10. So the elevated authority is starting. It's not already started because I have, number 1, to mention the reason why I am asking for this elevated authority. So this is, I'm doing some fixing in the customer data related to incident number 1, 2, 3. I press enter, and then EAM will check if I am allowed or not. So at the same time, so in this case I am allowed, at the same time, so the system is sending alerts to the members of the security department. In this example, this is a pop-up alert, it could be something else. We just see here that the initial profile, GM Basic LM, is now using an elevated session and the authority is coming from GM2. The method I'm using is swap method, and then the command is the one that we have just entered previously, and the command is just displaying, this is our command, displaying all the commands that we have put in a restricted menu.
So Guy, I can see that we have a graphical pop-up there, and that's being simulated for the IT department or the compliance department. That's useful, but I guess that's optional. You don't have to have an alert every time you run a command, do you?
No, absolutely. In fact, everything is customizable. So we even can, you can set up a rule to be alerted only for a very high level of elevated authority. For example, for this one, we could easily say that we don't want to receive alerts for this low level of elevated authority.
That's great. And could I also do it based on time, so that if someone's running options out of normal hours, so you'll alert me then?
Yeah, that's also possible. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks. Right, so this is the list of the commands that I am allowed to run. Just take a look at the parameters of this command. So this is, for example, a run SQL with the SQL statement. So it means that I cannot change the statement SQL. It's the SQL statement itself. So I am just allowed to run this specific SQL statement. So let's run it. The second option is a DFU. Okay, so that's the same DFU I tried previously. Let's run it. So as you could see now, I am allowed, so I will make my change. Okay, fixing this one. And fixing another one. Okay, there is a mistake, but that's fine. All right, so two changes in the file. So if I try on the command line and press F9, I can see also the commands that have been used during the elevated authority. If I try to run them right now, okay, it's not allowed. Same thing also if I stop the elevation authority, and if I try again, okay, I go back to my previous state. In the meantime, I'm receiving a report, or I mean the members of the security team is receiving a report. So we will see different ways to get reports. In this first scenario, we will just check the job log and the changes that have been done in the database. So as the reports are coming by email, it's asynchronous, so it could be very fast or sometimes a little bit delayed. Okay, so this is the report itself. So the members of the security team today are Steve and myself. So let's take a look at the job log first. All right. So the format of the report is completely customizable. You can put the logo, the colors you want, etc. At the head, in the header of the report, so you could see easily the attributes of the elevated authority. So we could see exactly the same thing as we have received in the pop-up, but also the duration. So it's 2 minutes 55 seconds. This is the delay of the elevated session. And in this, this is the job log. So we could see the first option that we have, the run SQL with the special SQL statement, then the DFU, and then also some mistakes in the job log. So that's fine also because you could see the full attributes of what has been done during this elevated session. And here also some attempts, as you could see. I tried to use the DFU outside of the menu, and then I was just rejected by it. So it's good also to know. And the second report is the changes on the database. So there is one changes because the other one, there was a mistake on the record that has been logged, but we see the change on the city was Brisbane, or Breezy for our friends down under, from Brisbane to Melbourne. So this is the database change for the exact period of time that the elevated session was running.
So if I'm understanding correctly, right, we don't have to see everything that that user does. We didn't need them to sign off and sign on again with a special or different authority. And the only time that they actually had the extra privileges were during that section where they'd taken the option, and then the moment that the option had finished, it automatically snapped back, and that special authority, that special privilege, that went with it.
Absolutely.
So what this means then is that we can limit the time that horrible terms like session hijacking, which become more popular these days, could possibly occur. We've made the window at which, if some horrible malware had got onto that PC for the trusted client, so it's not his fault or her fault, but it tried to do something with a ODBC connection, let's say, it couldn't possibly do it because that user doesn't have the authority.
Yeah.
Perfect.
This is the idea, yeah.
Then I think that shows the power of that part of the scenario. Okay, so in scenario 2, we're going to take another typical environment that people come across all the time. In this scenario, we have a user who has access to the command line, but doesn't have got access to everything. He can run commands, but he doesn't have access to specific tables or commands. And what we want to do here is temporarily get him the authority he needs to do his job, and during those times when he's being this super user, we want to audit what he's doing. But we don't want him to have to sign in and sign out with different users each time. We want it to be just a simple part of what he does in his day-to-day task. Now, when we're doing the analysis here, it's easier to show you some of the information using the graphical tool. Now, we mentioned in scenario 1 that everything that we do in the traditional green-on-black screen, the 5250, we can also do in the graphical. I'm going to ask you to use the graphical to display some of the analysis when we're looking at the job logs, to give you a flavour of how the graphical is, how it looks and feels. But just remember, everything you see him doing in the graphical, you can do in the 5250, and vice versa. Guy, would you start the demonstration?
Okay, Steve, thank you. All right, so we will use also a limited user. But different from the scenario 1. In the scenario 1, it was limited at the command line and limited on the authority. This one has full command line access, but it doesn't have permanent authority on the database. For example, I'm trying to access my customer file, and I don't have an authority on the file. That's all.
So it's not that he doesn't have access to the DSU or the command line, it's purely that he's locked out of the customer file.
Exactly, yeah, correct. So in EAM, there is a public command that just checking if there is a rule for elevated authority. So the public command, and we just put a proxy command just to facilitate the process. It's in QTPL, it's ask, just a shortcut. And when I press enter, so it will check, the system will check if there is a rule available for my profile. In that case, it says no valid rule exists. So let me check now what's the status of the rules, because I remember that there was a rule for me. So I'm using the graphical interface to check that rule. So if I right click on my machine here, it's a 7.2 machine. I go to EAM and then to rules. So I'm displaying all the rules available. So I would like just to see the rules for my profile. So remember that I was connected using GM Basic. So I find two rules, this one and this one. The first one is for ODBC, doing a swap. The second one is for the command line access, doing an adopt. So the status of this rule is hold. This is the reason why it didn't find it. So if I right click on this rule and make it released, right, and try again, it should find it. Ask. All right. So now it prompts to different parameters. So remember that in the first scenario, it was the same command, in fact, the same concept, but there was just one command that was mandatory. So just to show you that it's very flexible, so you can hide parameters or make it clear and make it changeable. So in that case, I could also put a ticket ID, and this ticket ID could be checked on the system, so to see if it's a valid ticket ID.
So have you created interfaces where they can do lookups of a value like the ticket ID against another database for, let's say, a help desk system that they've written internally?
Yeah, in fact, so we have our own ticket database, right? So we have two ways to work. So we can work on an interface between an external ticket database, an external ticket system, and our ticket system. So we can populate our ticket system, or we can directly write a program from here that will check directly on the external ticket database, whether it's on a Windows box, it's possible. We have done that for different customers, so of course it has to be customized because it depends on the help desk system, but it's easy to do.
But that's great to know. So there's an existing investment in a particular ticketing or help desk system. You can interface to that, yes. Or it can work in the standalone one with the database that's already included free of charge.
Correct.
Perfect. Yeah.
So here in this case there is no specific program to check, but I will just mention this ticket ID. Okay, and then I will put a command. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of fixing, Steve. So fixing customer data for reason 456. Okay, so I press enter, and then I will check. The system will check if the rule is accepted or not. Same thing as the previous scenario. So a pop-up alert is sent to the people, but again, it's not mandatory. So now I have the command line because it was the purpose of this elevation authority. So if I check the command set, I am able to access the file. So I can make my change. And I can do then other, just other thing, doing some information in start SQL, checking the charts, ending the subsystem. Changing the user profile, change mine. And changing the password. All right. Press F3 to exit. Okay, confirm. So this particular scenario is collecting much more information than the previous one. This is the reason why you could see a small delay. So let's go now on the console and see EAMs, now the jobs. So this is the list of all the jobs that have asked for an elevated authority during the last 24 hours. Of course, you can change the period of time. The first on the list is the last one, the most recent one. So if I double click on it, so I get the header information. So you could see exactly the same as you have seen in the previous report from scenario 1 with the duration, with the profiles from to, etc. Here you have also the job log, and you can also search for, I don't know, GLF client, for example. So you can make some search, and the interesting thing is that remember that we did a start SQL. So this is the job log, but we enrich the job log with two different things. One of them is the SQL statements that we have captured within the start SQL command. But we can also capture FTP client functions, like if we do a put or a get to a different system, so we get that. And also some dangerous or potentially dangerous commands like the change user profile, so we get also the full string with the parameters like this.
Perfect. Now, people may not realize this, Guy, but for those of you that aren't used to pouring through job logs, what Guy has done there is extracted not only the information from the job log, but also extra information. In this case, the most prominent one is the select statement. You don't see that in the job log by default. So if someone was to go into the start SQL command and issue all sorts of drop tables and deleting your data from your system, all you would normally see from the job log is that they had actually gone into the start SQL, not what they did. In this scenario, the job log is enhanced to actually show you what they did. And the fact that you can do that for FTP sessions as well is phenomenal.
Yeah, correct. So, but additionally to the job log, we can also collect more information. So on a different source, this is the screen captures. So the screen captures can be done in two different ways. So it's available directly in the graphical interface. So for example, I can here also search for the client file in all the screens, right? But I can also receive it as a PDF or an Excel file, or it could be, this example is an email, but it could be FTP, or it could be directly accessible by the console as well. And here there is an additional report versus the previous scenario. This is the screens. So this is the exactly same information. But here you could see all the screens that have been used during the elevated authority. Of course, this is flexible. We don't say that every elevated session has to collect the screen, so you can be very granular and say in this specific elevated session we need the screens. So it depends. And just take a look at this. We just hide the password, of course, because it's an important information, so we don't want to appear in the reports. So that was scenario number 2.
So that really shows the power then of this auditing software. So if I've understood correctly, based on any particular combination of rule and person applying to the rule, you can decide whether or not you want to capture some of the information, all of the information. You can decide whether you want to issue a real-time pop-up that interrupts somebody, or just collect it in an automated email. Whether you want to capture the screens or not. And even if you don't do that, is it possible to go back into the EAM afterwards and produce reports that allow you to find extra information to do with who did what on these rules in the past? So the rules exist. Can I look and say, yesterday somebody did this particular elevated authority?
Yes, of course. So we have different ways to address these questions. You can use the console like this. Let me EAM information, okay, and then I can click on it, define a period, so different one. For example, we can look at all the months, the current months, or a specific period of time, and then you have all the history of all the elevated sessions here. So if you want to look at, I don't know, all the people that elevates to this specific user profile, then you can have access to it and take a look at the job log. Also report to it. We have 50 to 50 commands that helps you, and I will show you right now, that can do that too. This is the option 1, and then here you can print EAM logs. You can report. So on the logs, on the screens, on all of them, and then you can have a specific selection criteria to address that. And it can be automized.
Thanks, Keith. And the reason I wanted you to show our audience this is that sometimes when things go wrong in life, we always blame the super users. And in this case, we're allowed to go back in time and we can see exactly what our super users did and didn't do. So we can actually clear their names as well as find out when they made mistakes. This ability to look back in time at a particular time period is very useful, and we'll see this time and time again in the Cilasoft software, where we can drill down by user or by job or by time period to work out exactly how we got to where we are. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Okay, so in scenario 3, we're going to look at something a little bit different. We look at ODBC and SQL type access, the non-5250 access. So move away from the command line now and think about other ways that people might connect to your data. And before you start saying, oh, I never ever use ODBC or I never ever use SQL, please bear in mind that every version of System I Access, IBM I Access, Client Access, PC support, however old you are, whatever you call that piece of software that you've been using to connect to your system via a PC for the last 15 years, every single one of those has a built-in ODBC driver that is installed by default. And if a user has simply just read-only access to a table, they have the full access to remove it from your system. So before you say, I never use it, just think, well, maybe you never intended to use it, but see how easy it would be to block it with EAM in this scenario. So what Guy's going to show you is someone connecting using one of these standard ODBC connections, how they might try and access your data, and how you can block it. Guy.
Okay, so this is a typical run SQL script within IBM I Navigator, which you should say maybe, it's a different name. And so I will run this, the first SQL statement, the select that you see at the top. So I press Ctrl-Y, then it will ask me for the database, all right, system. So this is my 7.2 system, and then I am connecting using the exact same profile that I used in the previous scenario. So we already know that I should not have access to this file. Right. So connect to database, executing the select, and yeah, very clear, not authorized to the client file. This is normal. So remember that when we do iSeries Navigator, there is a QZDA SO init job in the back, running with a Q user in the beginning, and then when I started to connect with GM Basic, so it swapped to the GM Basic user profile, and then check the authority against the current user profile. So in the previous scenario, we use a proxy command to ask for elevated authority. In our case here, we will use a procedure. This is the way we ask elevated authority. You could have just a simple way without any parameters, so it will automatically fill the parameter with the default values. And if you found just one rule, it will take it and fill all the default values. But if you want to specify something, you could also do. So we have two different versions of procedures. So here it means that I will take authority from the target profile GM. I will use the ticket 1, 2, 3 I already used, so let's say 7, 8, 9. And then I can specify a comment. So I will now fixing account data, not customer data, just to change it a bit. Right. And then I run this statement, because it's a statement, it's a call. As you could see briefly, there was also a pop-up. So you could see that we are in the ODBC environment. So we are running from GM Basic to GM. It's a swap. And it's a ticket. Okay. So let's continue with the statement, the save statement. So now it works. I can update as well and do this big select that is impacting the performance. In fact, I use it just to see how impacting it is. And once it's done, I will just close this window, and it will have the same result as 5250, so it will just produce the logs. Okay, so that's it. We want to save no. Okay. Then I should receive the same type of report, and I should also have, if I press F5 here. All right, so this is the last one, or the previous one, this one. All right, so this is the report itself. One thing that I didn't show previously is also a way to get the report not only by email, but in right-clicking here, view EAM documents, and then directly from the console, I can get, for example, the job.
Now that's very useful when you're in an auditing scenario, and in order to ask your what if question, you use this tool and it says, right, can I have a copy of those documents for the particular audit case he's opened? In that case, the right click, show the documents, either create another email for him, copy them off to a network drive in your proof folder, save you a lot of time. That's excellent.
Yeah. So we are here, so in the SQL script, we still the same, so 1 minute, and you see all the SQL statements, of course.
So this is really useful. Now, you've given an example there of a system that's correctly secured. So you had to use EAM in order to actually get access to the file. Now, dear listener, I'm not suggesting for a moment that your system is anything less than perfectly secured. But let's just assume for a moment it wasn't. We can enforce extra sets of rules with a sister product we're going to be talking about next, called Controller, that just in case you got the permissions wrong, it would stop people from getting access anyway. But that's for another session. But watch out for Controller. This is a really simple solution that we're putting forward here. I know that there's not a lot to see with ODBC, but when people realize the true power of ODBC, what it allows you to do, both update and access data, and even delete data, they'll realize just how important it is to have this authority correctly audited and blocked. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
So in this final scenario, we're going to turn things around a little bit. So far, we've shown how we can use EAM to allow you to do things. But you can also use EAM to block people from doing things, even super users. So in this scenario, I'm going to ask you to log on with a user that is effectively a god of the system. He has all the SecOffice special rights, he has all of the all-ops, literally can do anything. And I'm going to show you how, ask him to show you how that user, even with all those authorities, can still be blocked from running certain key commands. Now, Guy will show you some examples, but you might be thinking, why would I ever want to block any of my super users from issuing a key command? Well, let me just use an easy one before we start. Many of you will have 2 or 3 different systems that your super users look after. Just imagine that one of your administrators, whilst getting distracted, managed to issue the power down command on the wrong system. Wouldn't it be nice to have an extra layer of security at that point? Anyway, with that in mind, let's get on to the scenario. Guy, can you show us how you can block a super user?
All right. So let's connect with my profile, personal profile, which is a super user. So this user has all the special authority from the SecOffice class, so I can do anything I want. But not exactly with EAM. So in this scenario, we will just focus on the change sysval command to see how we can restrict it, but it is applicable for any commands. So this is the scenario. So I would like to change this one, for example. All right, so receive the message saying that the command, this command is not allowed, and he asked me to check if there is any rule in EAM that allow me to do this command. As you could see, the option 2 hasn't been completed, and I received also a message saying that controller has rejected the command change sysval. So in fact, this scenario is a combination between controller and EAM. It's not only EAM. So controller is blocking this command and asking me to use EAM to be able to use it. So same thing, public command ask. So I have 2 available rules. I will just look at the second one, because in this case I don't need additional authority. I have enough authority. It's just a way to justify what I will do. So the screen now, we know how the screen works. So I just need a command. So I'm changing sysval horizon. Okay, x66. All right, so same thing, you know that already. All right, so now I am on the command line again, so I'm using the same command. And now it works. Changing back just not to forget that. And you can think about any commands you want. It could be included in that. That's the way it works.
So I appreciate that's a simple scenario, very easy to get your head around, but incredibly powerful. And it's not that we don't trust our system administrators, but it does give them an extra level of protection about changing something without thinking about it, and also a nice audit log. But you mentioned that you could customize these screens, particularly those messages that we saw that flashed up. Could you just show us how easy that is to do, please?
Okay, Steve. So I will show you two things differently from two different products. Right now, this is EAM, so I will show you quickly how the rule is set up in EAM. So I can show you in the graphical and the 5250, so let's just use the 5250 for now. So the rule I just used previously on this scenario is this one, in fact. So this is the way the rule is structured in Cilasoft. You can base your rule from original profile to target profiles. It could be a profile, group profiles, a free group of profiles. It could be partial values of profiles. It's very, very flexible to set up the rule. We even have a customer that have a rule from percent to percent. Any profile to any profile that he uses it in a specific situation that makes sense for him. In the method, that's the interesting thing here. You have different ways. So you could do adopt authority. So we have seen that. Swap authority. We have seen also that. And log. This is the one that we have just used now. You can set up a rule for a specific date range, or from an IP address, for a specific independent ASP, and also we use in the second scenario a status that was hold, if you remember. We can use a rule for one shot. Okay, so if you need a second one, you need to call the guy to say, hey, I need another elevated ticket kind of authorization. It could be sort of kind of a permanent rule or just one-time rule.
Well, that shows the flexibility. I even see the dates and times in there, so that you could say that you are allowed to, going back to my favorite power down sys, yes, we have permission to restart the machine on a Sunday at 4 a.m. to 5 a.m., so you could have that command running in that period of time. That's great.
Absolutely. And how about your specific question? So you were asking about the ask. So this is the way we could customize the command depending on the rule. So we could hide, lock, or just leave the parameter open to be filled. Take a look also at the way we keep the job log and the screen management. So it could be also customized like that. We have more ways, of course, in many user exit entries that are available also, but this is just the very easy way. Now, the way to block. This is part of controller. We have what we call controls. And one control specifically, this is this one, do not allow critical commands outside of EAM. Let's take a look at how it is defined. This control is rejecting the commands that are registered in a group called *EAM. In fact, you can add group commands inside, so it's easy to change this value tomorrow, to add a power down sys, or all the commands you need. Then it will be logged, and this is the way it's rejected. All the commands from this group will be rejected if EAM is not active at the time the command is running. So we know that. So that's the way it works. And then sending the message, it's the action just after. So remember that we receive a break message. So this is the way we could also deliver.
Yeah. So every user gets to customize exactly the message they're using. So You know, if English is not your primary language, you put your message there in your primary language. If you wish to be more abrupt in the way that you tell them, you can be more abrupt in the way that you tell them. It's totally customizable.
Of course, yes.
Can I also ask, you mentioned controller there, and we'll be covering controller more in a separate webinar, but I just want to make sure the audience appreciates that you can use EAM without controller or with controller.
Yeah, EAM is not controller is not mandatory to use EAM, right? So the combination of both gives more power and more advanced features. For example, with EAM, with controller, you can restrict people using a change job to limit the log options in the job. You can also restrict people using the submit job because you can, since you have already elevated authority, you can submit a job that will not be monitored by EAM. So you can restrict that. You can also restrict the use of the ATTN, attention key. So many other pitfalls that you could find when you get elevated. You have to make sure that you cannot go around that.
Perfect. So one last question. Now, many of the people watching this webinar will have developed their own commands, and they might be thinking that, you know, the commands that they've created need protecting just as much as the operating system commands. So a simple example might be that I created a command for my system that shuts down my ERP environment. So even though the operating system is still working, if I issue this command, then all of my application environment goes offline. I may use this command before I do backups in the evening. Can I restrict my commands with EAM?
Yeah, good question also. In fact, the restriction is from controller. So it simply implies, let me show you a command that I have created. Where is this command? Okay, this is this one, free SQL. For example, this is a command that I have created. It's not a system command. It's a command that I have created in a specific library and just with a different name. So here I have registered this command in controller, and I can really fully apply all my rules to restrict or to make actions, send message pop-up, whatever I need, or even to Curella based on the control. So yeah, it is possible also to add user commands.
That's great. So just to sum up, the flexibility, we've seen all the way through these various scenarios that if it exists on a system and it follows the standard rules of IBMI, we can integrate with it. And I'm taking slight license there, I appreciate that, but if it's a command or an existing application, we can talk to them. And I think this is one of the benefits now of controller. It's something that I have grown to like, and it's the reason that now I use this product myself, is that everything that we're seeing can be scripted from a standard CL program, can be interfaced into a standard traditional RPG, CL application, as well as more modern applications. So we saw earlier how we could use ODBC. And it's this view of flexibility. Every time there's a new workload that's brought onto the machine, this way that you develop the application to allow you to your application, the EAM, the controllers and the like, to use it, that has made it very forward-thinking and popular, I think, with the user base. So before we sum up, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to explain this to us today, and I look forward to working with you on the next webinar.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, so thank you for joining us today. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you've seen the benefits that EAM can bring. This application can be integrated into your existing applications, whether they be traditional 5250 or more modern SQL ODBC types. If you'd like to know more, please feel free to contact us at any time. You'll see our websites on the screen in front of you, both mine and Guy's email addresses. We just want to thank you for your time, and we hope to hear from you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.